much like to do videos because I don't like the way I look in pictures. But this morning after my run, or during my run, I was talking to God and just saying how much pain I'm always feeling. And why do I have to go through so much? I realized, I'm a pretty happy person. I got a lot of great things going, but I suffer a lot of heartaches. And I feel like maybe somebody else can attest to this. You might be a very giving person, and a lot of times you do a lot of wonderful things. But I've been praying for like 45, 50 days now, the same thing. And God told me that, my heart needs to be even softer. I was like, oh my God, I've suffered hundreds of thousands of dollars in loss because my heart being soft, people walking over me doing things. What could you possibly be talking about? And I'm like, but there is something I harbor deep in my heart, kind of a little hatred for someone. And I've been praying and asking God, please take this away. Don't let me feel like this. And he said, I'm a God of my word, Stevie. He said, I truly love you, and I know your heart and that you love people. He said, but you have somebody that you hate, and that's my child. And I was like, God, but the wrong that was done. And he said, well, greater wrong has been done to my son. He said, but he still loved you enough to save your soul. And I said, I understand, God, but I'm not him. I'm not Jesus. What do you want me to do? How can I get rid of this? And he said, you need to fall in love with Jesus. And I said, I love the Lord. He said, no, fall in love with Jesus. If you fall in love with Jesus, nothing can really hurt you like that. Nothing. I have doubts if I'm going to post this because I look so bad. But if there's somebody out there and you've done a lot and you love people, you do, search your heart. Ask God to help you heal from whatever that is that's hurting you, because you have to love everybody. You have to truly love. And I think that if we fall in love with Jesus, really fall in love with him, the worst of enemies can't hurt us. I've seen people have testimonies where somebody killed their child and they prayed for that person's soul. That's where we have to be. That's where we have to be. And I want to be that person, because you reap what you sow. God is a God of his word. You can't deny that. I want to reap benefits. So he had told me to stand. He told me to fall in love with Jesus. And then he told me to get ready for a blessing. Wow. That's it.
In the dead of night at Mule Creek State Prison, the urgent call came at 2 a.m. She passed out. David Brinson told corrections officers about his wife, Stephanie. The staff rushed to the family visitation unit apartment like spaces designed for intimate overnight stays between inmates and their loved ones. They found 62-year-old Stephanie Diane Brinson unresponsive. Despite frantic resuscitation agents, she was pronounced dead at 2:51 a.m. on November 13, 2024. What initially appeared as a medical emergency soon revealed a horrifying truth. The woman who had devoted herself to a man serving 4 consecutive life sentences for murder had herself become his 5th victim, strangled during what should have been a loving reunion. This wasn't just a murder. It was the catastrophic collapse of multiple systems meant to protect vulnerable individuals. How could a man who had already taken 4 lives be granted unsupervised time with his wife? What failures of judgment, both institutional and personal, led to this tragedy? Stephanie's story exposes the dangerous intersection of loneliness, hope, and institutional negligence. She believed in redemption, reading the Bible with her husband and encouraging his education behind bars. Her family called her Stevie, the generous heart that held them together. Now they're left questioning how the prison system allowed her to be alone with a convicted killer. Before we continue, I want you to pay close attention to this story. The details I'm about to share might save your life or the life of someone you care about. Throughout this video, I'll highlight critical warning signs and safety measures that everyone should know about relationships with incarcerated individuals. Stay with me. What you learn today could prevent another tragedy tomorrow. Like this video now if you believe prison visitation policies need urgent reform, and subscribe to join our community dedicated to uncovering the truth behind these devastating crimes. Before she became a headline, Stephanie Diane Brinson was the heartbeat of her family. At 62, Stevie had built a life filled with purpose and connection. A skilled hairstylist who owned her small business in Los Angeles, she transformed not just appearances but spirits with her gentle hands and warm conversation. To her 2 sons, she was an unwavering source of strength. To her 6 grandchildren, she was the grandmother who never missed a school play or baseball game. Her mother, Ovetta Wilson, described her daughter as the glue that held our family together, the one everyone called when life became too heavy to bear alone. Stephanie's home was a gathering place, her kitchen table the site of family meetings and holiday celebrations. She kept photo albums meticulously organized, preserving memories with the same care she applied to everything in her life. Friends knew her as someone who would drop everything to help in a crisis, often arriving with home-cooked meals and practical solutions. "My mom could make anyone feel special," her son Armand Torres recalled. She remembered every birthday, every anniversary. She showed up for people. What many couldn't understand was how this vibrant, loving woman ended up married to a man serving multiple life sentences for murder. The Stephanie who visited Mule Creek State Prison regularly, carrying Bible passages and college application materials, seemed at odds with the successful businesswoman her family knew. But those closest to Stephanie noticed changes in the years before her death. After her divorce, and as her children built their own lives, quiet moments became longer. Weekends stretched emptier. The woman who had always given so much to others found herself wondering who would be there for her as she aged. She told me once that David made her feel needed again, her daughter-in-law Natalie Jimenez revealed. She believed everyone deserved a second chance. That belief in redemption would ultimately cost Stephanie everything. David Brinson wasn't always known as inmate Cake 32901. In 1990, at age 19, he was a high school dropout with a growing rap sheet of petty crimes when he and 3 accomplices targeted a liquor store in South Los Angeles. What began as a robbery ended in bloodshed. 4 men executed with methodical precision, each shot in the back of the head. The victims included the 68-year-old store owner, his 22-year-old nephew, who was working part-time to pay for college, and 2 customers who had the misfortune of walking in during the robbery. Security footage captured David's cold efficiency, showing no hesitation as he pulled the trigger repeatedly. During his trial, prosecutors painted the portrait of a calculating killer. He didn't just take their money, the district attorney told jurors. He took their lives to eliminate witnesses. The jury deliberated for just 4 hours before returning 4 guilty verdicts. The judge sentenced David to 4 consecutive life terms without possibility of parole, declaring him beyond rehabilitation. Court transcripts reveal David showed no remorse during sentencing, staring blankly ahead as victims' families delivered heart-wrenching impact statements. Behind prison walls, however, David crafted a different narrative. He earned his GED, completed anger management programs, and became active in prison ministry. By the time he met Stephanie in 2018 through a prison pen pal program, he presented himself as a changed man seeking redemption. He wrote beautiful letters, one of Stephanie's friends later told investigators. He quoted scripture and talked about how prison had given him time to reflect on his terrible choices. What Stephanie never knew was that David's prison record included 7 incidents of violence against cellmates and guards, information not disclosed to potential visitors. His apparent transformation concealed a man who had mastered manipulation rather than remorse. The first letter arrived on a Tuesday. Stephanie had joined the prison correspondence program through her church's outreach ministry, viewing it as a way to offer Christian guidance to those seeking redemption. David's initial message was humble, thoughtful, and filled with references to his spiritual journey. "I never expected to fall in love," Stephanie confided to her sister 6 months into their correspondence. "But there's a depth to him that most free men I've met don't have." Their relationship evolved from weekly letters to regular phone calls. David listened attentively as Stephanie described her day, her family, her dreams. He remembered details about her grandchildren that even their parents sometimes forgot. When Stephanie mentioned her arthritis was acting up, David researched natural remedies and shared them in his next letter. After 18 months of correspondence, Stephanie made the 3-hour drive to Mule Creek State Prison for their first face-to-face. Despite the institutional setting and watchful guards, she described feeling an immediate connection. "When our eyes met, I knew this was real," she wrote in her journal. Their courtship progressed within the strict confines of prison regulations. They were married in a brief ceremony in the prison visiting room in 2021, with only a corrections officer and prison chaplain as witnesses. None of Stephanie's family attended. They had expressed concerns that she was making a terrible mistake. "Mom became defensive whenever we questioned her relationship," Armand explained. "She'd say, 'David understands me in ways no one else does.' She believed she was his salvation, and somehow that gave her purpose." Stephanie's daughter-in-law noticed troubling patterns. She stopped seeing friends who criticized her marriage. She withdrew from family gatherings if we asked too many questions about David. She even postponed knee surgery because she didn't want to miss visits. What Stephanie interpreted as devotion, her family recognized as isolation, the first warning sign of a controlling relationship. But without the physical proximity typical in abusive relationships, these red flags were easier to dismiss. "She told me once that loving David was the most selfless thing she'd ever done," Natalie recalled. "I wonder now if she ever considered it might also be the most dangerous." The family visitation unit at Mule Creek State Prison bears little resemblance to the stark cells and barred windows typically associated with incarceration. These apartment-like spaces, equipped with a small kitchen, living area, and private bedroom, are designed to maintain family bonds despite imprisonment. For inmates like David Brinson, these visits represent rare moments of normalcy. No prison jumpsuits, no guards hovering nearby, no time limits beyond the allocated 30 to 40 hours. The program operates under the philosophy that maintaining family connections reduces recidivism and aids rehabilitation. "Family visits are a privilege, not a right," explains the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation Policy Manual. To qualify, inmates must demonstrate good behavior, participate in rehabilitation programs, and have no disciplinary actions for at least a year. Certain offenders, those on death row or convicted of sex crimes, are automatically disqualified. What the policy doesn't address is how thoroughly an inmate's violent history is considered when granting these intimate visits. David Brinson's 4 murder convictions didn't disqualify him. His 7 documented violent incidents within prison walls didn't raise sufficient red flags. During family visits, corrections officers conduct count checks approximately 4 times per 24-hour period. The SCRA manual explicitly states that every effort shall be made to ensure the privacy of the inmate and their visitor. Yes, this balance between security and privacy creates a dangerous gray area where visitors like Stephanie are vulnerable. The system assumes that violence against strangers doesn't translate to violence against loved ones, explains Dr. Catherine Foreman, a criminologist specializing in violent offenders. That's a potentially deadly misconception. Before we continue with what happened during Stephanie's final visit, I want you to consider this question. At what point should an individual's violent history override their right to intimate family connections? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you know someone in a relationship with an incarcerated person, this next section contains critical information that could save their life. November 13th, 2024 began like any other visiting day for Stephanie. Security footage shows her arriving at Mule Creek State Prison at 10:17 a.m., carrying a small overnight bag and a paper sack of groceries, ingredients to cook David's favorite meal. She signed in, passed through security screening, and was escorted to the family visitation unit. A corrections officer later recalled that Stephanie seemed upbeat, even excited about the visit. She mentioned plans to discuss David's application for a correspondence college program. The officer conducted the standard contraband check of her belongings, then left the couple alone in Unit 3. What transpired over the next 16 hours remains largely unknown. The family units have no surveillance cameras inside a privacy measure that would prove fatal. The couple was last seen together during the 8 p.m. inmate count, when an officer reported they were preparing dinner together. At 2:03 a.m., David used the unit's phone to contact the guard station. "My wife," he said, his voice reportedly calm. "She's not breathing." When officers arrived, they found Stephanie on the bedroom floor. David claimed they had been intimate when she suddenly lost consciousness. Medical staff attempted CPR for 37 minutes before pronouncing her dead at 2:51 a.m. Initial observations noted no obvious cause of death, and David was returned to his cell while an investigation began. It wasn't until the autopsy that the truth emerged. The medical examiner documented bruising on Stephanie's neck, consistent with manual strangulation. Microscopic hemorrhages in her eyes and lungs confirmed she had been asphyxiated. Most telling was the pattern of bruising, indicating she had been strangled from behind with significant force. The timeline suggested David had waited nearly an hour after Stephanie's death before calling for help. During this time, he had washed dishes, straightened the living area, and changed his clothes. The investigation into Stephanie's death moved with methodical precision. Crime scene technicians processed the family visit unit, collecting bedding, clothing, and DNA samples. David's hands showed subtle abrasions consistent with applying force injuries he claimed came from attempting CPR. Initially, David maintained his innocence, telling investigators that Stephanie had experienced a medical emergency during intimacy. "She just stopped breathing," he insisted during his first interview. "I tried to help her. I really tried." This narrative collapsed when the autopsy results revealed the unmistakable signs of strangulation. The medical examiner's report was definitive: cause of death, asphyxiation due to manual strangulation. Manner of death, homicide. David was transferred to the state prison system's healthcare facility in Stockton, a move officials described as standard procedure, but one that also placed him under heightened security. There, he refused further interviews with investigators, speaking only through his court-appointed attorney. As of March 2025, the Amador County District Attorney's Office had not yet filed formal charges, citing the need for thorough examination of all evidence. This delay frustrated Stephanie's family, who saw it as another failure of the justice system. The TREC launched an internal review of the family visitation program, focusing on how inmates with violent histories are evaluated. 3 prison officials were placed on administrative leave pending the investigation's outcome. Documents obtained through public records requests revealed a troubling oversight. David's application for family visits had been approved, despite a psychological evaluation noting his continued capacity for manipulation and violence. This crucial assessment had been filed, but never flagged during the approval process. "We are examining every aspect of this case to determine where our systems failed," a STRED spokesperson stated. "Mrs. Brinson's death is a tragedy that should never have occurred within our facilities. My mother believed in second chances. The system that was supposed to protect her didn't deserve even a first chance." Armand Torres's voice cracked as he addressed reporters outside the Amador County Courthouse. Flanked by family members wearing buttons with Stephanie's smiling face, he demanded accountability for his mother's death. The family's grief quickly transformed into action. They filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, citing negligence in allowing a convicted murderer unsupervised access to a vulnerable visitor. "How does a man who executed 4 people in cold blood get approved for overnight visits?" questioned Stephanie's mother, Yvette Wilson, her 83-year-old frame trembling with emotion. "They handed my daughter to a killer and looked the other way." The lawsuit highlighted critical failures. David's history of in-prison violence was never disclosed to Stephanie. His psychological evaluations noting high risk for intimate partner violence were overlooked, and the family visit unit lacked basic safety features like emergency call buttons. Stephanie's grandchildren launched a social media campaign with the hashtag #JusticeForStevie, sharing memories of their grandmother while advocating for prison visitation reform. Their TikTok videos garnered millions of views, bringing national attention to the case. The prison gave him the perfect opportunity, the perfect location, and the perfect victim, said Natalie Jimenez, Stephanie's daughter-in-law. They might as well have tied the knot around her neck themselves. The family established a foundation in Stephanie's name, dedicated to educating women about the dangers of relationships with violent offenders and advocating for visitor safety reforms in prisons nationwide. The death of Stephanie Brinson exposed a web of institutional failures that extended far beyond a single prison or officer. Each layer of protection designed to prevent exactly this type of tragedy had crumbled, revealing a system prioritizing rehabilitation over safety. First came the approval process. David Brinson's application for family visits should have triggered enhanced scrutiny given his conviction for multiple murders. Instead, it received standard processing, with his case file showing just a cursory review before approval. The system operates on autopilot, explained former Corrections Administrator Marcus Jennings. Once an inmate meets basic behavioral requirements, the process becomes mechanical rather than analytical. Second was the monitoring protocol. The family visit units at Mule Creek State Prison had no surveillance cameras, no panic buttons, and checks occurred only every 6 hours during overnight periods. This created a dangerous window where visitors had no immediate way to summon help. Third was the information gap. Stephanie never received complete information about David's prison conduct record. The CDCR's visitor information packet mentioned nothing about his 7 violent incidents behind bars or psychological assessments identifying him as high risk. Informed consent is impossible without complete information, noted victims' rights attorney Eliza Montgomery. Stephanie was making life or death decisions without crucial facts the state possessed but withheld. Perhaps most troubling was the philosophical failure. The prison system's admirable goal of maintaining family connections had morphed into a dangerous assumption that violent offenders pose no threat to loved ones, despite criminological research consistently showing otherwise. As internal investigations continued, documents revealed that 3 other women had filed complaints about threatening behavior from their incarcerated partners during family visits at Mule Creek in the previous year. All 3 complaints had been classified as low priority and remained unresolved at the time of Stephanie's death. The tragedy isn't just that Stephanie died, her son Armand observed. It's that her death was preventable at so many points along the way. Stephanie's tragic end offers critical lessons that could save lives. If you're considering a relationship with an incarcerated person, or know someone who has these insights might be the difference between life and death. First, understand that past violence remains the single strongest predictor of future violence. Dr. Elaine Westmoreland, forensic psychologist, explains when someone has committed multiple violent acts, especially murders, that behavior stems from fundamental aspects of their personality structure. These traits rarely change completely, even with rehabilitation programs. Always conduct thorough research beyond what your incarcerated partner or the prison system tells you. Court records are public. Review the original case files, not just the version you've been told. Contact the prosecutor's office from their case or victims' advocacy groups for perspective that prison ministries might not provide. Watch for these warning signs in correspondence or conversations. Controlling behaviors, like questioning who you speak to or demanding frequent communication. Rapid relationship progression or pressure for commitment. Isolation tactics that separate you from friends and family who express concerns. Financial requests that increase in frequency or amount. Inconsistencies in their stories about their crime or past. Minimizing responsibility by blaming victims, circumstances, or the system. If visiting in person, always. Inform multiple people of your exact whereabouts and expected return. Establish a check-in system with family members. Research emergency protocols at the facility before visiting. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. For correctional facilities, Stephanie's case demonstrates the urgent need for enhanced risk assessment for violent offenders before approving intimate visits. Emergency alert systems in family visit units. Transparent disclosure of an inmate's complete behavioral history to potential visitors. Regular welfare checks during extended visits. If this information helps even one person avoid a dangerous situation, Stephanie's story will have created lasting change. Please share this video with anyone who might benefit from these warnings. If you've experienced concerning behavior during prison visits or have insights to share, leave a comment below. Your experience could help others recognize danger before it's too late. Like and subscribe to support our mission of preventing future tragedies through awareness and education. Stephanie Diane Brinson's empty chair at family gatherings stands as a stark reminder of how quickly trust can turn fatal. Her grandchildren still reach for their phones to call her with good news, only to confront the silence her absence created. The small business she built now sits vacant, her clients left wondering how someone so full of life could be gone so suddenly. The criminal justice system continues its methodical process. David Brinson awaits potential new charges while serving his existing life sentences. For him, little has changed. For Stephanie's family, everything has. Her case has sparked a national conversation about prison visitation safety. 3 states have already introduced Stephanie's law, legislation requiring enhanced monitoring during family visits and comprehensive disclosure of an inmate's violent history to potential visitors. The Tread Crow's implemented emergency reforms, installing panic buttons in family visit units and increasing monitoring frequency. But these changes came too late for Stephanie. "My mother believed people could change," Armand Torres reflected. "Her compassion wasn't a weakness, it was her greatest strength. The system that failed to protect her compassion is what needs to change." Stephanie's story isn't just a tragedy to be mourned, but a warning to be heeded. Her life mattered. Her death must matter too. If you know someone in a relationship with an incarcerated person, send them this video immediately. It might save their life. Hit subscribe now to join our community fighting for victim protection and prison reform. Together we can ensure Stephanie's story prevents another family from experiencing this same devastating loss. The time for action is now.